So, this year I was part of the YouTube Conlang Relay, a spectacular event hosted by Mr. George Corley, host of the Conlang Relay podcast. And if I'm remembering correctly, years and years ago while I was raking up the yard, I was listening to the Conlang Relay podcast in my earphones, and that was what sort of got me into linguistics and conlanging in the first place. So this is big news for me. This is very exciting. Anyways, the Conlang Relay goes like this. George writes a story in English, which then gets translated into a conlang of his choice, probably one that he's made. That translated text then gets passed on to the next person along with a grammar, a document pretty much describing how the whole language works, right? These two things, the text and the grammar document, combine to form
the torch.
And that's the torch that gets passed along to each next person as this relay goes, you know, like a relay you'd see in sports. So George sends the torch along to the next person, right? And then that person translates the torch from George's language into their language. Thus the torch is now in a second conlang, and that gets passed on to the next person who translates it into the next language, and so on and so forth all the way along the line. Like a game of Chinese whispers, which apparently in America is called telephone.
I was thrilled to find out the next person after me in line would be the famous Zaway. Oh, that's going to be awesome. Zaway gets to see my conlang. I wonder who comes before me. Fuck me, Ryan.
It's over. It's over. It's so over. It's over. It's so over. K-BOP is the creation of Daniel. Basically, Daniel combined a bunch of weird, inconvenient features, all from all different ideas off of Tumblr and different blogs, into basically the worst language that he could create. It's sort of like a prototype of the modern cursed conlang, which Agmashwar and his scaly mates have helped to popularise in recent years. It's mostly famous for its use of phonemic hats, but there are also a bunch of other things that are fucked up about it. For example, the words are incredibly long and incredibly ambiguous. The same sentence, which takes 45 minutes to say, in K-BOP, can be translated either into this or into this. Fuck me, Ryan. This is why we love you, Dan the Man. In today's conlanging community, it's largely been popularised by Jan Miseli's video on it in Conlang Critic. That's where I learned about it from. Needless to say, I was absolutely starstruck when I found out I'd be working with the Dan the Man on the K-BOP. Unfortunately, I also knew that this was probably going to be the hardest process of translation I'd ever have to do in my life. So the date was set for my leg of the relay, and I planned it perfectly so that I'd have a fairly light workload university-wise. So now I was working 8 hours a day at front desk when I ought to be working on the relay. That sucks ass. Thankfully, I am resilient. So the date came around and Daniel sent me the torch, the text thus far, as it had been translated in and out of everyone else's conlangs up until this point. So already it was a little bit mutilated, but it was also in K-BOP. So this was going to be a bit of a challenge for me. Here's the text. Fapjag lisleb gos suf san ap vlir sing asu vomnag vlim case navagasnaga. Oh, sorry, did I say the text? My bad, I meant the first bloomin' word.
Let's open up the text. Holy fuck.
The first thing you need to know about K-BOP is that the words are super fucking long. Why is that? Well, it's the way that information is encoded in K-BOP, right? Every word in K-BOP consists of an incredibly vague root, which could mean, you know, in English, a root tends to mean maybe one or two, or, you know, it can mean a couple things, but generally it means one thing, right? In K-BOP, there can be as many meanings as you want to the word, and they're all context dependent, right? Then a very long series of usually mandatory morphemes are added onto that, each one carrying a little bit more information about what the signified concept is. Now, hypothetically, you'd be able to use these suffixes to glean information about what the root itself is, right? Because they all carry a bit more information about the identity of the actual word. But the information that you actually get from these suffixes is like matches speakers' expectations, market value in US dollars, and how do I even draw this? Honesty and subject magnitude relative to that of a bread box. Ryan. So this was going to be a little bit difficult for me. The inherent vagueness of K-Bob meant that translation had to work like this. I write down all of the possible meanings for every word and then go back over them and cross-compare all of the potential meanings to see if there is, if you can line them up in a way that gets them to make sense. And sometimes you might think, oh, I've got it working in a way that makes sense, it must be these things, but instead, then you'll have another look and you'll think, hold on, here's a whole new perspective that I didn't even realize could be a thing before, and now maybe everything that I've gotten up till this point is wrong, who knows? And then sometimes it turns out to be some other completely different thing that you hadn't even thought of before, and then you go back over it and you think, oh, now it's actually obvious it would have been this the whole time. And all you can do is translate the entire text and use the context of every combined word with all the different possible meanings, and then go back over the whole thing afterwards, so it's a constant battle against the language itself.
I've got a stem here which can mean any of these things, right? It is the object of a verb which seemingly means to doff, right? Because these are the only things that it can mean, and only one of those possible meanings is a verb. So, right, and this has to be doff, right? So what can you doff? You can doff a cloak. Well, that'd be great, except the fucking... This clearly says that it's an angiosperm, which is a type of plant. Oh, what does that mean? Is a cloak a great angiosperm now? Let's just go through. Aliplex, I looked up a few of these already. Let's look at Des Esprit. Is this even a word? No, this isn't even a fucking word. Well, why is it in here then? It's not English. And I'm not even pointing the microphone at myself.
There were a handful of additional difficulties too.
So this is what this root means. No way.
So translation was hell.
This one is finite and this one is expected. This one is accusative. This here tells us that it's not food. This one tells us that it's an other gender category. This one tells us that it dies by a sledgehammer. And then this one tells us that it's great. And then this here is an estimation of its value. And I know that just off the top of my head now.
This is what I had by the end of my process. God, cover your vices and sell the woman the eggs before she starves. Now hear this quest. The 9 great rivers begin in the great north in mid-January, or the desert, or Jersey, in front of a cool lake in the heat of the sun. Go and I will weave an awesome immortal story in footsteps in front of unspeakably epic immortal eternity. You tolerate this, and I shall begin the quest for you to find the 6 great ropes together deep in the sea. 6 episthicont moons and 3 suns. Speaker, fill your great saddlebag with amazing donuts. You walk. Friend, my great camel is giving birth. The camel will quieten if you take off the cloak before the sun gets extremely hot. Friend, I need more supplies to provide for the calf. The calf drains the bottle. Speaker, cool thread. Finally, the friend takes the inedible angiosperm and the edible angiosperm with the camel. Behind a year, the great calf will very well extend the great span to 8.
It took me about 2 days, so that by the time I finished translating the text into English, I only had 2 days left to translate it into my Conlang, which I'm just now realising I haven't actually told you anything about yet. A few years ago, I invented a language called known in English as Plumlang. Now, why would it have such a name? I'll get to that in a moment, but it's got a very interesting phonology, as you'll see on the screen just now, and a slightly uncommon grammar. Sure, it's got some pretty crazy consonants, but what's really mad about Plumlang is its tones. In Plumlang, the tones serve the purpose of communicating all non-derivational morphology. Basically, anything your average language would use, like prepositions or particles or affixes for, Plumlang uses tones for. It's got a number of tone classes too, and some tonal agreement. It's got a grammar that pretty well resembles the local Katu languages that I've worked with in real life, so that's just sort of a bit of my personal flair in there. Oh, and I should probably mention that Plumlang was originally made for an elaborate Michael Rosen YouTube poop series that I never ended up making. Would have been spoken by a space-dwelling race called the Lemonade Boys, but that's neither here nor there. On the 45-minute train rides to and from work every day, I would be sat there on the train with the grammar for Plumlang on my phone and my tiny little notebook here, trying to write down an interlinear gloss for the Plumlang grammar and translate the text into Plumlang. On the day I was set to hand over my torch to Zaway, I ended up staying up until 4 in the morning local time so I could get everything done. And it ended up having a bunch of fucking mistakes in it that I needed to edit and go through with Zaway and fix it all up. It was a whole thing. So without further ado, this is my final text in Plumlang. As soon as I finished that, off I sent the text into Zaway's realm and I was done with it, and it seemed like Zaway had a lot of fun with it. Go watch their video right now to see how it went, because I'm in it.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. Just tripped and donked my noggin on the bollard again. I'm fine.
Alright.
Take this!
There's a whole playlist full of all the different videos for the Conlang Relay, and you need to watch all of the rest of them right now.